that fucking thing, and it's weird. And I'm starting the recording straight away because there is a shit ton to cover.
Oh, is there? Okay.
Very short period of time. Well, I say about an hour and a half or so. So I'm going to start up very simply. Both George and myself really enjoy following the Tour de France. We follow it pretty religiously. George has been doing a fantasy league for 10 years.
I think so, yeah. I mean, my uncle's been doing it for 20, but I've been involved for 10.
Yeah, and then I'm one of those suckers that watches every stage, including the really, really bloody boring ones. So I sent George a message. If you don't know George is a very good old friend of mine. George runs Jam. I used to work for Jam. George is currently sitting in what looks like a giant teepee.
Gazebo. I'm inside a gazebo.
You're in Smurf life because it's nice and blue.
Am I glowing? I don't know how good the light is in here.
You are. You're looking radiant.
Oh, okay, fine. We'll stick with that for now. I'm facing a window and it's giving me a bit of a glow.
It's a good, healthy glow. I mean, you do look a bit like a head, but I'm kind of down with that.
Yeah, man.
So what I wanted to do, and George knows, as I said, I love following the Tour de France. I sit here with the fucking guide on my desk, going through it, reading all the different stages, all the teams, all that kind of stuff. I do it every year. And I thought, because of how much of a pair of geeks we both are about this, that we will do a series of podcasts talking through the Tour this year and kind of each of the stages. We'll do we'll try and do them every couple of days so we can kind of do a bit of roundup on what's happened over the last few days. But this is the first one, which is primarily going to be talking about the Tour itself. So there's a shit ton to cover because it's 21 days. I'm conscious. My intention of this is just to kind of cover maybe the first couple of stages, a bit of an overview of the route, the jerseys and what the jerseys are, because there are going to be people that don't know the different jerseys of the classifications. And then briefly, some of the key riders for the overall, so the yellow jersey. And then also one I'd really like to talk about is the green jersey. And there's a reason for that, which if you follow cycling in the UK, you will know why most British people now have a sudden interest in the green jersey.
We could spend the whole time just talking about that if you like.
Yeah, to be honest. So I'm going to go straight into it to start with. It's 23 teams, 21 stages, over 2,000 miles of racing this year, 3 mountaintop finishes. It looks like it's going to be pretty epic. I think one stage is like up Mont Ventoux like twice or something crazy like that. As usual, the start of the Tour is always pretty dull. First stage is just under 200k, 2,800 meters of climbing, pretty flat really. The official guide says this is one for the punchers, but I wouldn't write off the sprinters either on that. Second stage is pretty much the same, but ironically was the last time they visited the second stage, Dan Martin won it. Dan Martin won.
Top lad.
Yeah, the Mer de Bretagne, it was where it finished, and Dan Martin won it in 2018. Bit of a surprise.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it looks like, there's some good things coming out of the Tour. Fundamentally, the announcement that there is going to be a women's race next year, that's great news. How much of that we actually know at the moment, to be perfectly honest, is sweet fuck all. It's kind of been like, we're going to do it. That's it.
Yeah, they've not talked much publicly about that yet. So I think we'll wait and see with bated breath.
Yeah, I really do hope it happens, and it is not something that in the past has felt like we're just doing it for the sake of doing it because we're just trying to tick that box. And that's what it's kind of felt like for a long time. And they've gone from doing it for being like 3 days to 1 day to 2 days. And it's just to be honest, a bit of bullshit. But we've seen now that we've seen like Zwift has now got involved and said they're going to sponsor it, which is great. That's really, really good. So yeah, I mean, hopefully, fingers crossed, next year we'll actually have a women's Tour de France as well. And I really would like to hope it runs at the same time. But that obviously gets interesting because of the Giro Rosa, which normally runs at the same time as the Tour de France.
Which isn't running this year at all.
It's lost its top tier.
Oh yeah, that's what it is.
Status because of how much of a shit show it was last year, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to reserve judgment until they've put some more ideas down on paper and shown them to the public.
Yeah. I mean, it's a start at least. That's all we could say. So, I mean, let's get straight to it and kind of break down the four jerseys. To be honest, I think one of them should no longer be a jersey, if I'm perfectly honest with you. The
young jersey. Yeah, I thought you'd say that.
They should do it as an old jersey.
Yeah, I mean, I think the average age of all the main contenders at the moment is so much within that young jersey bracket that quite often you very rarely see it, or it's on the back of somebody who isn't the white jersey leader. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you. I think a little bit. I think it's lost a bit of its former status.
Yeah, it's under 25, which the last two Tour de France winners, and then the last, I'm just trying to think with the Giro as well, and then Teo under 25.
I think he's just 26 actually, but only recent.
Yeah, but when he won the Giro, he was
yes,
as well. And then you look at Pogacar, white jersey, Tour de France.
Yeah.
Bernal, same thing. I'm not sure if Bernal was the white jersey as well for the Giro this year. I can't actually remember. But potentially.
I'm pretty sure it was.
Yeah. So it's like that kind of jersey which seems a bit. Why not make it younger? 23.
Yeah, it would have more relevance if it was 20, 23, 21. I don't know what percentage of the peloton are under the age of 23. It might only be a handful of riders. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I'd have to check.
Yeah, it does feel like it's got to that point though where it's, I don't know, we're seeing younger and younger winners, but this could be an argument that I've been like reading quite a lot about arguments of why there's younger winners, and part of it is saying that it's purely the coincidence of what's happened over the last near enough 2 years now with all the lockdown stuff, and a lot of the younger riders just adapt better to that change, which I thought was quite an interesting take on it.
I think there's a really, really, really good crop of riders that have been kind of like up and coming for the last 5 or 6 years with all of the latest sports science at their disposal, getting into big teams early, getting backed early, getting all the right prep and focus ready to deliver all at the same time. So I think it's a really interesting generation of really strong riders that are there right now. Yeah,
definitely. And when you look at that with who I have written down as I've got like a long list of favourites for the yellow jersey, a long list of favourites for the green jersey. The polka dot jersey, I really like the polka dot jersey, but it kind of is what it is. I like it when it goes to one of the teams that's not a World Tour team. For the lower teams to get an opportunity to get on the podium. But often it does end up quite often it's ended up going to whoever wins the overall.
Yeah, and because of that, I find myself becoming less and less interested in it every year. I want to be, because there you like you say, there are the smaller teams out there, the continental teams that work really hard to get into that polka dot jersey for some days. But yeah, quite often we then see it as the third jersey that Egan Bernal has won, or whatever it happens to be, So, I feel too often I'm looking for the result of the polka dot, and I'm like, my attention quickly moves on.
Yeah. So just to explain it very briefly, the yellow jersey is for the leader of the Tour de France. And what that means is the person who completes every single stage in the quickest possible time. Pretty simple. The green jersey is the points jersey, which is basically the sprinter's jersey. They have intermediate sprints, sprints and the finals. That's how you build up the points, and that's how you can eventually win it. You know, we see that Sagan has been so dominant in that because not necessarily because he wins tons of stages, but because he's always up there and he gets points in the mountains. That's generally how he wins it. It was quite nice last year, actually, that it wasn't won by Sagan. It was won by Sam Bennett. And there was actually a bit of a battle for it, which was quite cool. And then Polka Dot, as we said, is King of the Mountains jersey. So there'll be points at certain mountains in the race. That could be middle of the stage, start of the stage, end of the stage. Across the whole stage, you can build up points in that classification. Then you have the white jersey, which is effectively the same as the yellow jersey for under 25s. And then you have the team classification, which Movistar generally always win.
Yeah, again, that's another one that I seem to remember like halfway through the tour. Oh yeah, there's a team classification. And I only ever remember it because I see them all in the same matching helmet. And you're right, it's usually Movistar. But again, it holds little interest to me. I don't know how you feel about it.
I just think I think it's like one of those ones where it's a sponsor's got some money and has kind of gone, oh, I want to have a classification, and it's a bit of a, I don't know. I think it's a bit naff.
I think it is a useful tool to make sure that kind of prize money is more evenly split. So just, if there's one dominant rider for Ineos, whatever it happens to be, there's other prize pots up for grabs. Because don't forget, with all of these things you're talking about, polka dot jerseys, points jerseys, they're, stage finishes, intermediate sprints, there's lots of little prize purses all along the route, which then add up to being the team's kind of earnings, if you like. So it does help with that a little bit, but as a spectator, it doesn't hold much value for me.
I agree with you. And obviously, what normally happens in the tour is that the winnings across the whole race. So whether that's you've got a day in the polka dot, you're going to get some money. If you've got the team classification, you've got the yellow jersey for a day. That pot, it all normally goes into one pot for the team and is normally distributed evenly to riders, soigneurs, DSs, everyone in the team who's helped during the race, which is, generally speaking, that's what happens. And it's really nice when that does happen because it values the work that you don't see behind the scenes. The mechanics are the ones that are normally up working, till God midnight and are up the next day at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, making sure everything's ready again. People don't really see that side of it, I don't think.
Yeah, that's true.
So let's go to the yellow jersey. I've got a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 long list.
14, that is a long list.
It's a long list. And realistically, I mean, I've just written, for example, Ineos.
Yes, you know what I was about to say. I've grouped them into one title for me. Yeah,
but there's 4 riders in Ineos I think could win. Thomas, Port, Carapaz, Teo.
Yeah.
And then I've done a similar with Movistar, where I've said I don't think they stand as good a chance, but I look at Lopez, Valverde, and Marc Soler.
Yeah, but we can't talk about them as serious contenders for the yellow jersey, can we?
I don't think. I mean,
can we?
I think you could talk about them as being in the top 10.
Serious contenders for the top 10. Not got a problem with that. But don't get me wrong. Movistar normally packed with hitters, and similar names we see there quite often. But again, I don't know if they've ever found that magic formula to crack it at this race.
Where it's normally just a case of going, let's get the team competition. That's all it is.
Yeah.
If you go and watch I've not watched the second season, but there is a documentary about Movistar. It's 2 seasons now. I've watched the first one, and the first one is from the 2019 Tour de France when they went there with Mikel Landa, Valverde, and Quintana, and it just looked like a bunch of spoiled kids sticking their dummies out their pram because they weren't happy. And it just looked, you go there with 3 egos who just clearly didn't like each other and didn't get on. And there's so much like tension in that.
And for me, a lot of that comes down to how's the team set up, what's the strategy, who are the people operating the team? Because you see other teams go with lots of big egos and big names and lots of competent riders, but it's how well can you pull that off in a racing environment? Which, you know, and that's why I'm saying I can't consider any of those names a contender for the yellow jersey because I've not seen the evidence that they can deliver as a team.
Yeah. Now I'm going to put two names. I don't want to go to Pogacar and Primoz yet because I think they're probably the favourites along with Ineos. But there's a few outsiders that I want to mention. Two of them are French.
Mm-hmm. Alaphilippe. Yeah, fantastic rider. One of my favourites at this race. One of my favourites. Just does so much.
Great to watch. I have a dream scenario in my head of Alaphilippe leading out Mark Cavendish on the Champs-Élysées for Cav to go in the last stage. That would be incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, it could happen.
I mean, I don't think Cav's won on the Champs-Élysées since Brad Wiggins led him out in 2012, but it could happen, sure.
I mean, that was pretty cool in its own way, wasn't it? But like, you never know. And I mean, Alaphilippe has got to be the French, I would say probably the more serious French favourite. The other one is David Gaudu.
Yeah.
You know, he's kind of come from being under the limelight of Pinot quite a lot and has really performed quite well in some of the lead-up races.
You know, I quite weirdly, I'm quite pleased this year that Pinot and Bardet aren't racing because they always take the focus of, the big French hopes. But again, they've never really had the team around them and the strategy to make it work. I'm quite pleased with looking at somebody else. You know, do Groupama FDJ have the team to be able to put Gaudu in the right place? I don't know. Or you know, he's going to go for some stages, hopefully, going to try and mix things up. I'd like to see him have a lot of free reign because I think he's an exciting rider. And that's obviously where Alaphilippe does so well. He kind of gets let off the leash to go and cause carnage.
Yeah.
But in doing so, you know, chances of being right up there at the pointy end of the yellow jersey, again, for me, he's back there in that top 20 category, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And he's not, I don't think he's got the team behind him because Arnaud Demar's going as well. So kind of done this whole half GC, half split sprinter thing, which doesn't really work with the smaller team sizes now. It was harder when it was a larger team size. I don't think you could go for both.
I mean, they do a great job as a team, right? If you think about minutes they accumulate on telly for sponsors as a team, there's me a heck of a lot in there. You know, you've got Philippe getting up the road all the time. They're always up there in the sprints. They're always sat on the front of the peloton for at least a chunk of the day, most days. You know, they do a really good job of being active in the race. But I don't think they've got an out-and-out leader that's capable of winning the Tour.
I'd agree with both of those teams. The other one that I wanted to put out there, well, there's two. So, I mean, Simon Yates, we already know he's not going for the overall. He said he's going for stage victories. Fine, that's cool. And he's got to be one of the best climbers in the world, so that's absolutely fine. Rigoberto Urán has had a weird resurgence since winning a mountain time trial as well. Like, and he's the top 10. He's definitely a top 10.
A lot of time for Rigoberto. Great rider, great bike rider. Gets really stuck in. He could definitely feature in the top 10. He's the kind of guy that can definitely stick it out, does well enough in the high mountains. He can definitely be in the top 10. Yeah, for either of them to be focusing on anything more than a couple of, like a stage win and a top 10 is ludicrous because they just don't have the team structure to do it.
Yeah. The advantage that EF have there, I mean, they've got Bissinger who could go and win a TT. They've got Rigo who can just mix it up and do what Rigo does. You just kind of let him do what he wants. And I mean, he looks the best he's looked in a few years, I would say. Yeah.
But there's letting someone do what they want, you know, which is what someone like Alaphilippe excels at. But, you know, that takes it out of you so often that you can only do that really for a few days and then you're clinging on for dear life, right? So, yeah, I mean, hopefully they get stuck in and what I like to see in that environment is when they're causing the yellow jersey holder or the yellow jersey holding team problems, because that's what keeps the race interesting, you know?
I agree.
But it's only kept interesting as long as that rider is roughly in touch. If they're 7 minutes down already, sat in the top 30,
and no one gives a shit.
Yeah. No one gives a toss, and that's what keeps the racing a bit boring. So these guys, their teams, for Simon Yates to have a good tour, I think his team need to keep him relevant as long as they can.
Yep, I agree. And then we have to mention it, but I don't think he's at all in contention for the yellow jersey. I think his teams already have missed it as well as Chris Froome. It's great.
Yeah,
it's great that he's returning. But will he finish the tour?
It would be remiss of us not to mention it because he's such he's got a brilliant history with the race. I've watched him race a few times this year, and he's a shadow of his former self. I mean, quite right. When you have an injury of that scale, should you ever expect to be back on the top step? No, I don't think so.
But I
don't think so.
The good thing about taking him is like the guy has got such a wealth of experience that is going to be very good to the team. I know he keeps saying that he wants to win a 5th tour, but I hate to say it, I don't see it happening.
I don't see it happening. I mean, he can be a useful ally to Woods, who I think is the team leader.
Yeah.
But again, have they got the team to be able to stay there and keep themselves relevant through 3 weeks of bike racing? I'm not sure. I think it's
Okay.
I think that'll be the team we see the least of over the 3 weeks of racing.
I agree. I mean, as you say, Woods is probably the team leader, and Froome is going to be able to help advise and give. He's going to be like a road captain, but to be honest, if I'm perfectly honest, I don't think he's going to finish the race.
I think Froome will be whispering in Woods' ear via the radio whilst he's at the bottom of the mountain and Woods is trying to get up the top. It's one of those things. I think there'll be a big chasm when the racing starts and those front boys we haven't yet talked about really go. I don't really see either Woods or Froome being able to be anywhere near him.
I agree. So then that comes down to, I would say, the 3 teams that probably have the favourites, and I'm talking Jumbo-Visma, UAE, and Ineos. And I mean, Ineos has 4 favourites, I would say. I mean, of varying scale. And what I mean by that is you're talking 3 of them are Grand Tour winners.
Yeah.
And one of them was podiumed at the Tour de France last year.
Yeah. It's the one that I think is interesting for me, because we see this with Ineos all the time. They always bring this big pile of hitters. Where UAE have strengthened, because before, there was a lot of solo work going on there, basically sitting on the wheel of Primož Roglič for most of the tour and then having enough in the legs to wrestle the yellow jersey from him at the end. But, this year, Mark Hershey joining the team, he was the outstanding rider a couple of tours ago. What can they do to actually be able to work better as a team this year to really see a bit of a 3-way punching fest between Jumbo-Visma, UAE and Ineos?
Yeah, they've really strengthened their team, and they had to be honest with you. And I mean, as you mentioned, Mark Hershey. I mean, he's not really had the start of the year maybe that he would like. I believe that
True.
David de la Cruz is going. I believe that David Formolo is racing. Rafael Micah, Rui Costa. They've got a team of hitters.
Such experience. Yeah, great experience, great bike riders. I mean, let's not forget, they're up against 2 other really good, really experienced, really talented riders. But it's just interesting for me just to see how they've strengthened just a little bit, deploying a bit more resources for this race. As reigning champions, they should do. Do they need it? Or will we just see a repeat of last year? Where Roglic's strengths are. They could get into that yellow nice and early and have a whole pile of people sitting on their wheels waiting for the wheels to come off, waiting for the screws to come loose.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Jumbo-Visma's team. I've just got it up in front of me. You've got Primož, you've got Jonas Vingegaard, who's coming for Tom Dumoulin. Stephen Kruijswijk, Sepp Kuss, Mike Turnison, Wout van Aert, Tony Martin, Robert Hessing.
What a team.
It's so solid.
What a team.
I mean, you look at how Vingegaard raced at the start of the year. He really put his name in the hat and just went, he's a young guy, and he's just gone and put his name in the hat. I'm trying to move my little footstool so I can put my feet up.
Yeah.
He's put his name in the hat and just gone, I'm here, I'm ready to go. You know, Kreuzberg has always been, I always remember that crash in the Giro into the side of a snowy mountain.
Oof, yeah.
But he's always been, he's kind of gone from being probably a GC leader to one of the best domestics out there. So, I mean, Attacus as well, Robert Hessing as well, and then Wout van Aert, who is probably the most indestructible just force of nature going, because he can win a sprint, he can win a mountain stage, he can win a time trial, he can be that man, he can be your pace setter on the mountains.
I mean, the team has got some mad strength to it. It'd be really interesting to see how they take up the challenge this year, given the disappointment of where they were in the last tour, kind of letting it all slip at the end. I really rate Wout van Aert, Tony Martin, Kruijswijk, really, really good bike racers. It's one of those things that, do they have the confidence in them and the strategical skills to deal with the on-road racing conditions and come out on top? That's the thing that Ineos have done time after time after time. The reason they win is they deal with that mid-race, the crux of the race. They deal with that scenario so well that they manage to overcome everybody else. Everybody else kind of goes into a mild state of panic, losing riders quicker than they want to up the side of the hill and can't really figure it all out. I'd love to see someone like Jumbo-Visma get that right this year, mix it up.
I mean, for me, I'm obviously have a slight bias, but they're probably the team I would favour to win this year, as in I would like personally to win.
Really? Interesting. Yeah.
I'd like them to
win.
That
is interesting.
And it is because part of it is that what happened last year, that's like underdog thing. Part of it is that Wout van Aert is probably my favourite rider of all time, or up there. Yeah. And then second, Tony Martin is also up there.
Yeah.
Tony Martin's a hero. They're probably, for me, they're the team I would like to do well. And I think it's a very strong all-round team. I couldn't really say a weaker rider in it. I mean, we know Sepkus, maybe when, I can't remember what race it was recently, but they gave him the opportunity to be the team leader and he just kind of didn't live up to it. But he'll serve his role superbly in the role that they've given him. How they use Van Aert will be interesting again, because he can go off and compete in most stages, regardless of what's in front of him. He can get stuck in. So, but the team are going to have that balance up of going and getting him up the road, competing for a stage, or holding him back, keeping his powder dry to help out Roglic. Difficult one. And again, does that become their main issue as a team, and they've got somebody like Van Aert on there who can go and deliver all across the board? So you'd like to see him do that. Ineos never have that problem. They always have everybody marshaled and where they need them to be. Very rarely do we have those, except for that time that Chris Froome rolled over the top of Wiggins at the top of a mountain. But normally everyone is pretty kind of like on the straight and narrow. When you've got a rider like Van Aert who can go off and do other stuff, I'd love to see him go racing. So I hope they kind of let him kind of go and race his bike. Yeah.
I see that as the potential crack in the team. Not to say that he's a weakness, but then all of a sudden you're working with one less guy pulling for the team. If there ever was a rider that could go off and do his own thing and then come straight back into working well for the team, it is him.
Yeah, he's strong enough.
It is him, but he will be a few matches short of where he was when he went off.
I mean, but the thing is, Wout van Aert has probably got about 500 matches to burn compared to everyone else. 6.
Man's got a massive box. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
He's got a crate that he carries around with him in his back pocket. So I might be overanalyzing it, but I think if I'm I look for a unified team, a really strong unified team. When I look at the Jumbo-Visma team, I'm like, cool, I'd like to see Wout van Aert going mixing it up, and therefore he's not, potentially in my head, he's not playing as strong a team role as he could be. But we'll see. We'll see. Like they did a really good job last year working as a team. I don't think Roglic has had as much racing this year.
He's not racing Dauphiné, I don't think.
I don't think he's done a lot of like an actual. I think he's only done a few races this year. I think he's been off mainly up in the high mountains training more than anything.
His last, it wasn't the Dauphiné, sorry. It was his last race, I think, was one of the Spring Classics. And same with Wout van Aert. They've both not been racing. They haven't done the Dauphiné. They haven't done the Tour de Suisse, which is your normal route towards the Tour de France, which is quite interesting. But we have seen, we'll see. I mean, it could mean they're both coming in.
I am reading here that he did win the Tour of the Basque Country, and he did beat Pogacar at the Tour of Basque Country. But that's I think that's what I've got in front of me. He's not done many other races outside of that this year. So we'll see what can they do as a team. I'll be keeping a very close eye on that team of yellow jerseys. They're also one of the other teams that I just really love their setup and the way they look. I think they look smart. They look right. Yeah. You can spot them from a mile off, and I quite like that about a team. I find that so much easier to kind of get bought into them because I find them aesthetically appealing.
Even though this year they're not racing in a yellow jersey. Do you know that? You did not know that, did you? This year they're not racing in a yellow jersey.
Right, well, just take back everything I just said and scrap that then. What do you mean they're not racing in a yellow jersey?
So they've done a special jersey, which is like a grey that has loads of names on it of supporters of the team, and it's grey. It does still have yellow in it, but they've done, it's like how EF have always kind of been a bit, not really raced in a pink jersey at the Giro. They've now taken this stance that they probably shouldn't race in a yellow jersey at the Tour de France. So they've raced. They're in this like grey. It looks quite smart, but it also is very dark and doesn't stand out as well.
Right. Well, you know what I said a minute ago about really liking their aesthetic and all that kind of stuff. I think that might change once I see the racing jersey and see the team. But there we go.
I've not seen it in like kit, but I saw they did like a competition for it, so it'd be interesting to see how that worked.
Got you.
Then go on.
So I mean, so we touched a bit on UAE, touched a bit on Jumbo Visma, but so when I sit down tonight to pick my first selection for my Tour de France fantasy team, and just to give, I think you probably know this, Chris, but just to give you a quick reminder, the way that we do ours off like an organized spreadsheet that my uncle built like 20 years ago, and that the riders are done in rounds, they're picked in rounds between like 25 of us. And if you pick a rider in the first round, he's then not available for anybody else to pick in the rest of the rounds. So who your first pick is makes a big difference. And this year, there's three big names there that really matter. If you haven't got one of those three names on your team sheet, you can't have them in the rest of the competition. So it's I'm really struggling right now to pick between Pogacar, Roglic, and I've got one Ineos guy in my head, not four. I've got one.
Wow.
Who is it?
Carapaz.
No, Carapaz.
Thomas.
No. Geraint Thomas.
Yeah.
I can't not back him entirely.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed the kind of, I think they've had a renaissance last couple of seasons in terms of their attitude. Brailsford's touched on it a bunch of times. They're out there to race. They're out there to get stuck in. And I love that. I love watching it. It's reinvigorated my kind of energy and like interest in the team. And you can't not rate Geraint Thomas.
He's just such a normal guy.
Yeah.
The only problem, which is his biggest weakness, is he is prone to crashing.
He is hella prone to crashing. Man doesn't know how to stay on his bike for 21 days. He will crash. It's just a case of how bad will the crash be?
It's a guarantee that he is going to crash at some point. I mean, you could put money on it. He will crash at some point.
The severity of which bone he breaks will impact whether or not he's in that top three at the end or not, I think. Now, don't get me wrong. That's not to write off Carapaz. That's not to put down Teo at all. Great bike riders. Teo especially. I really enjoyed watching him over the last few years. But I think the experience that Thomas brings, and hopefully if they can get a bit of confidence in there, I think they've got to be for me, they're the favourite. They're the one to be beating.
I mean, you look at their lineup, their rider list for the Tour de France is ridiculous. It is Richard Carapaz, who's won the Giro, Castroviejo, who's probably one of the best domestiques in the flatter stages and like the low mountains, and also a damn good time trialist. Teo, not much to be said about Teo. He won the Giro. Kwiatkowski, former world champion, pretty much won.
Such an engine.
Won most one-day races that are out there, and as you say, has somehow in any other team he'd be a GC leader.
But I think Ineos use him so well. Yeah. He's so optimized for that role that they stick him in. It's that that a lot of teams would bite your arm off to have him.
I remember. I think it was a couple of years ago when they were still Team Sky. And I think it might have been Chris Froome's last win on the at the Tour de France. And I always remember this little bit of Kwiatkowski riding up some mountain, and you could just see him slowly braking, and he's still going.
Yeah.
He takes his glasses off and launches them to the side of the road and carries on for like another 10 minutes. You're just like, this guy's a monster.
Yeah, I mean, he wouldn't get away with that now. What with littering zones being enforced, but you're right. He has a freakish ability just to stick himself in a dark place and stay there for a long ass time. That is a weapon that I don't see the other teams deploying as well. And we've not even touched on Richie Porte.
He's he's reborn now. He's back at Ineos. I mean, it was great seeing him get on the podium last year at Trek Segafredo. It was weird that he left Team Sky, if I'm perfectly honest. I thought that was a little bit weird. But I kind of get he went because he wanted to go and try out his own ambitions and have a go at GC. I get it.
Yeah.
But Ineos is the team that he should be at. He's been part of the team for so long.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he could have been in Ineos during Froome's real golden era, because Richie Porte, I don't think, is an out-and-out domestique. And Froome was going to get backed during that whole time, So, I mean, it'd be interesting to see how they use Porte at this race, because, he's got potential now. He won the Dauphiné. He's got the caliber. He's always threatened in these races. So it'd be really interesting to see what's changed. It feels like he's a revitalized rider now he's back there, but will we see that? How will they deploy him? Will they send him up the road? Will he be there like marshalling, like in the high mountains, protecting whoever happens to be the the GC contender? Hopefully, Thomas.
The other thing,
will he become an out and out leader?
Yeah, but also the other thing to say about Porte is he's pretty crash prone as well. He's had his fair bad luck as well, hasn't he?
I think you'd be hard pushed to find a Tour de France race where Ineos don't lose a key man to a big crash.
Yeah,
so it's and there's very little they can do about that most of the time. Even when you're working hard and you're pulling, keeping your guys safe on the front, they still somehow seem to manage up with someone with a broken collarbone or whatever it happens to be. But that's part of bike racing.
Then
now, I don't think the other teams have to rely on that happening this year, but it would be really interesting to see, if they do get their main guys through the first 5 or 6 days injury free, what can they do with this new attitude they've got?
Completely agree. And then the remainder of the teams, you've got Luke Rowe, who's probably the best, road captain at the moment. You look at how he raced at the World Champs and led like Tom Pidcock around, and put him in these ridiculously good positions in the Spring Classics as well. Luke Rowe is an exceptional rider in all of the flatter stages and all of the, the low mountain points. He's going to be the guy that's marching in the front of the peloton, controlling things. He's really taken on that role that Ian Stannard used to do back in 5 days.
Dare I say, I think he's doing it slightly better than Ian Stannard did.
I agree.
Ian Stannard was great, don't get me wrong, but Luke Rowe is just superb at that role.
And then the other one to mention is Dylan Van Baal, who seems to have just become a bit of an animal over the last year. He's, looking super solid, winning breakaways, and in one of the classics, he rode away from the peloton. He can time trial. He's playing probably a kind of a similar role to Luke Rowe, but I would say is probably better in the going to be better in the mountains than Luke Rowe would be. Is it great?
Yeah, if they can keep riders like that in the race coming into the last week, they've got the ability, they've got the team there to do what's Ineos usually do, and that's completely dominate.
Yeah.
So we round back to our previous guys and talk about Roglic and Pogacar, and it's how do they as a team overcome that? That's the big question mark. And I think what Pogacar did so well last year without a team was basically sit and hover behind and wait for his time, wait and bide his time. Will Ineos allow him to get away with that?
He's now won a Grand Tour, so he's a marked man.
Yeah, exactly. How early in the race is the time trial as well? Is it day 3 or 4? I think maybe.
We'll have a flick while you're talking.
Much earlier than we're used to. Save from when the times that we have like a time trial first. So it's I think it might be day 4 or 5. Day 5. 27 Ks.
Yeah, day 5.
Right? Day 5. So that's going to be really interesting because all of a sudden, all these guys, Thomas, Pogacar, Roglic, we know they can all time trial pretty well up there with some of the best.
And it's a flat TT as well.
Flat and fast. So yeah, that for me, that's the first thing I'm looking for coming in that first week is what shape we're in by the end of that stage 5.
I really enjoy the TTs because you see all the weird little tech things appear. And we're both good friends with the guys at Aerocoach, and it has been very nice seeing their things appearing in the World Tour.
Yeah. And I think it's something that especially we find it very relatable. It's the thing we've done the most of. It's the thing that most bike riders, regardless of your level, you can go and do a time trial, or you can relate to that mentality of sitting there in the wind on your own because you've been dropped by the group or you're out on a hard ride by yourself. You can put yourself in their shoes. You can understand how hard it is, how hard they're going. I find those absolutely captivating.
Yeah, same. I could watch them all day.
I do.
To be fair, so do I. I do agree. Like the top 3 favourites, it probably is Thomas, Primoz, and Pogacar. And I would love to see. My heart would love to see Thomas win again because I just, as a personality, I really like him. The other 2 are a bit robotic for me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing kind of more of them this year. I think they're getting a lot more attention because they've been doing so well. I think Pogacar's got, he's got time to develop and blossom and kind of show us a bit more of his personality. Roglic is a robot. Let's be honest, he's a robot. It's what seems to work well for him. Very drilled, very robotic. I don't really buy into him off the bike, but when he's on the bike, you kind of can't argue. The guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, would I begrudge him if he won? I don't know.
Well, the last stage race that you mentioned that he won, that was the first time I think I've seen him like smiling and laughing in the post-race interviews ever.
Sure.
He actually looked like he was having a good time, and that was the race that Vingegaard won a stage, and I think it was Primoz and Vingegaard were in like a breakaway together, and Vingegaard was like, "Can I ever go for it?" And Roglic was like, "Yeah, go for it." That was kind of cool to see. But I would really love Thomas to win another one because I think some people maybe thought that the 2018 win was a bit of a fluke or something. It's not a fluke. He was the best rider that year, and then the following
and it's
second. So,
exactly. And that was the pinnacle of kind of 7 or 8 years worth of Grand Tour riding all coming to fruition at once. He will be a great rider if he can do that again. Now, I'm not certain that he can. I think we might see the Team Ineos leadership change hands a couple of times throughout the course of the race. But my heart hopes that he can. I've got his yellow jersey, signed yellow jersey, on the wall in the living room from when he won. Sits pride of place up above the telly. But it'd be really good to see them and him getting stuck in again, because he's what a bike rider.
Yeah, and what people forget about Thomas as well is he is a complete package. Like, he's raced the classics,
the track,
all classics, the track. He's an Olympic champion. Like, he's a complete rider.
Yeah,
he's kind of done a bit of everything, which is great. Right, I really want to cover the green jersey. Obviously, this. So I've got a 6 list contenders I have put down.
Cool.
And I'm going to just read all the contenders on my list, and we can just tick through it. Sagan.
Hit me.
Sagan.
Yep.
Cav.
Yeah.
Arnold Demar.
Yeah.
Wout van Aert.
Mm-hmm.
Mathieu van der Poel.
Yeah. What a bike rider.
And Michael Matthews.
Okay. Yeah.
Michael Matthews is the most outside of that, because I don't really think he's done anything in a very long time, it feels like.
Now, the signal cut out a little bit. Did I miss a name, or is Caleb Ewan not on your list?
He's not on my list.
Interesting, because he's pretty high on my list. Let's talk about the interesting point first. Let's talk about Cav. Has Cav got a chance of winning a stage?
Yes.
Of course he does. If he's in the race, of course he does.
Do you know what? And I'm obviously super biased because he's probably my favourite rider of all time. I have watched every race that he's raced at Quickstep this year. I've watched every single one.
Have you? Yeah.
They're all on GCN Plus. I've watched the weird ones in weird random countries I've never even heard. Well, I've heard of the countries, but I've never heard of the races before. I've watched every single one. And the reason why I have a slight bias being part Manx, but you cannot write him off. You just can't. And if you look at the contrast, the end of last season, Cav being interviewed in tears in Bahrain McLaren kit at the time, not even knowing he's going to have a contract. And then you see this attitude change. He's gone to Patrick Lefebvre and basically said, I will fund myself. Give me a... That takes a lot of bollocks to do that. To Patrick Lefebvre, of all people, first of all.
Yeah.
And then we see him winning the winning stages at the not so well-known races. But there's some pretty good sprinters at those races. And then he goes to the Tour of Belgium, where there's probably the strongest sprinter lineup we've seen at a stage race this year, maybe minus De Giro. But to be fair, I would say some of the riders at the Tour of Belgium were as good as the riders at the Giro. And the last stage, when he won he was second in one of the stages by about that much, like half.
Yeah.
And then when he won the last stage, his reaction to winning that last stage made me go, he's fucking back. Yeah.
I really hope we get to see him race the way we know he can race, right? Well, I cast my mind back to but before his little hiatus out of the Tour de France, I cast my mind back to watching him race in the big races, and he was trying so hard, almost trying too hard, if you like, and he was getting himself in uncomfortable positions, getting boxed in a lot. We didn't really see him get to deploy his full arsenal.
Yeah.
All I hope for this year is that he gets a shot at a stage or two, and I really want to see where he's at, because I think you can never write the man off if he's in it. I think he can take a stage. I think it might have to be early in the Tour. I don't know if we'll see him fare that well up over the high mountains and kind of towards the Champs-Élysées. I dare say he might not even make it the whole way round. But I think in those couple of early sprint stages, he's the one everybody's going to watch him. Absolutely everybody.
He's also got probably the best lead out man in the world with him, Michael Morkov.
Yeah, yeah. They're a good, well-drilled team. They know what they're doing in this environment, you know? That's one of the things that if you look at most of the other people, they lack that aspect. But Quickstep have always had a well-drilled lead-out train. They value being up there in that kind of race.
It's for me, it'll be like, it's been 3 years since he's raced the Tour de France. The last time he raced the Tour de France was for Dimension Data. And it was, as you say, I feel like a lot of the time when he first joined Dimension Data, it was very like exciting to watch. He felt very fresh. He was winning stages. Towards the latter end of his time at that team, you could feel like he was like trying. The team wasn't doing very well, and you could feel like there was a lot of pressure on him to perform, and he maybe didn't deal with that pressure very well. Then the year at Bahrain, McLaren as it was, now Bahrain victorious, absolute shocker of a year, you know, terrible.
Yeah.
And, you know, he came out of that, didn't win anything, didn't really get up there. I mean, bear in mind, you know, he's had these like autoimmune issues with the Epstein-Barr and other things, which are probably a huge setback, not just physically, but also in confidence mentally. Then the crash that he had with Sagan, that was pretty scary. That would definitely shock most people if you think about it. And then you look at how he's racing at Quickstep at the moment. The first couple of races, you could tell he was a bit nervous. And then you go and see him, and then he just gets sent to loads of these like small Belgian races, and he's fucking drilling it on the front of the peloton. And it's like, I can't even tell you a race where you've seen Cav drilling it on the front of a peloton before. It's not been something he's done, but he's keen to work with the team. He's keen to be a member of the team and earn his place. And, you know, we can't deny it's going to be sad Sam Bennett not racing because, you know, he's
agreed.
Reigning green jersey wearer. It'd be a real shame he's not racing. He's probably up there as one of the best sprinters at the moment in terms of the power that he produces. He's crazy. But who would you take if this is the question that I've been umming and ahhing for a while? You have Sam Bennett, who's been injured, hasn't really raced in a long time, but is also the reigning green jersey wearer. Mark Cavendish, who's winning stages at the moment at pretty good races. It's like, the decision is a hard decision, understandably.
I think there's no major loss for the team with Bennett not being able to go and Cavendish stepping into that role.
Yeah.
You know, sure, the chances of retaining the green jersey have definitely gone down. I don't think Cav can be a contender in that for the whole 3 weeks. But in terms of what a team goes there for, you know, lots of airtime, shot at winning races, you know, I think they're going to do. I think Cav will be a good team member. Like I said, I'd love to see him pick up a stage. I'd be very surprised if we're still talking about him going into week 2. And I'm not sure he can be competitive at more than a stage or 2. But, you know, I'd like to say stranger things have happened, but I'm not sure they have. But
you can't write. I think my stance is you just cannot write him off.
I mean, the problem I foresee with him is, you know, there's so many people clamoring for those early sprint stages. So many potential names up there, so many quick guys, and I now got this fear inside of me of having seen him in those scenarios over the last few years and just always coming off like 10th or 12th or 14th because just not working for him. You know, I wouldn't mind to see if he's rolling in 3rd, 4th, but he's kind of been able to deploy himself properly. That's what I want to see. I want to see, you know, let's see market his best. What's he capable of?
It'd be great, and it will really be great to see. And I really, really hope he races well. I'm going to go straight to Caleb Ewan because Caleb Ewan is, I always think, races like Mark Cavendish. The reason why it's not that I don't rate him. I think I just don't really like him as a rider. And that sounds
fair.
Really...
That's completely fair. I've got a number of riders that I just really don't like. Don't like Caleb. I mean, he's got to be one of the quickest, you know, in terms of like the way he races his bike and his ability to get up to speed is mad.
Yeah.
Can he can he outmuscle some of the other guys? I don't know. Has he got the team to always keep him in the right place and keep him fresh? I don't know. When I'm picking my sprinter for my Tour de France fantasy team, I'm going to find it hard to ignore his name this year, I think. Of course, I'm going to probably foolishly spend the credits on Mark Cavendish, but we'll see if I can overcome my ego with that one and my desire to see Mark do well. I hate to say it, but I don't find Sagan that interesting anymore.
Many riders are better at what he used to do than him now.
Yeah, and it's almost so formulaic for him. He'll keep himself in the top 5 in most of the important sprints, get his team to work hard to mop up a lot of the intermediate sprints, keep his points tally high, and it's a strategy. I mean, it works for him, but I don't find it that interesting as a viewer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm over a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, how many green jerseys has he won? 7 or something, isn't it? I think it's 7.
If I was going to guess, I was going to say 5, but I don't actually know off the top of my head.
So it is 7. 7-time
winner. Is he on 7?
Yeah. I
mean, that's a lot.
It is a lot. You can't not put him in that list on that basis. But the thing with Sagan is, I think it's got to this point with him where you look at Van der Poel, Michael Matthews to an extent, Wout van Aert. They're the same kind of riders as Sagan. And they're the ones I'm watching now instead of watching Sagan. They're the ones that are doing what Sagan was doing 5 years ago of winning the sprint and trying to get in the break to make sure they win the sprint for the intermediate from the break. Oh, and then still recovering and still competing for the stage later on in the day. Or trying to win out and just staying away. He's kind of lost that kind of, that cocky exuberance that made him attractive to watch. And I think Mathieu van der Poel and Wout van Aert now occupy that arena for me. 100%. The bit that'll be interesting is, as I say, you definitely can't knock him off that list.
No.
The other one I want to mention, because he's probably the French hope on the sprint, is Arnaud Démare. I class him as the French hope for the sprint because personally, I don't think Nasser Bouhanni or Brian Coquard are as good a sprinters as Arnaud Démare, personally.
No, I always had high hopes for Brian Coquard, but I don't think he's got it to be able to perform on the biggest of stages. Démare, Démare's shown he can. He's got a couple of stages already under his belt, I think, 2.
Yeah.
But again, is he limited to a stage? Has he got it in him to be competitive at more than one stage? It'd be interesting to see where he's at. Again, I think he struggles with the fact that he just doesn't have the same arsenal, same team. They're not drilled the same way as some of the other big boys are. And then you've got to have a bit of luck coming your way as well. You've got to have the right gaps open up for you. You've got to be able to kind of get into take advantage of the positions that are there. So, Démare. Do I think he's compared to the green jersey? Nah, probably not.
He's more of an out-and-out sprinter, not someone that's going to be... I can't see him going for the intermediate sprint points. And to be honest, they make the difference in that competition. You need those.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to keep that tally topping up. Again, that's why Sagan's done so well over the last few years. He's always made sure the team is on top of keeping those points going up all the time. It's basically been what that team exists for, right? It's that you can't say they've really gone to any Grand Tour with any other high aspirations of any GC performances. It's the Sagan show.
Yeah. Now
the show just ain't as interesting as it used to be.
Well, it's good. I think what's going to be interesting, isn't it? How Sagan's out of contract after this year.
Is he? Okay, interesting. Yeah.
There's a couple of interest. I mean, the Tour de France always ends up becoming a point where contracts and negotiations happen. So one of them, the big one, has been mentioned a few times, is Sagan being out of contract. And there was this initial chat that Patrick Lefevre was like, "Oh, I might be interested," and then he turned around and said, "I can't afford Sagan and Sagan's entourage." That's what he turned around.
Yeah.
But then I think the latest one I heard was about him going to. Him and his entourage going to Total Direct Energy. And
interesting. Can I interject?
course you can.
Can I have like a 30-second wee break? Because if I don't, I'm going to explode sideways.
Yeah,
and I want to make sure I concentrate on this point because this is the interesting bit.
Go. Don't stand there.
Right?
Yeah, go.
Back in a minute. I'm refreshed. I'm reinvigorated. I feel very Richie Port about the situation.
Yeah, a huge weight off your mind, eh?
Sorry, you were saying you're completely right. I remember when I used to work for a power meter brand, directly for the brand. It was always the Tour de France rest days that you'd get a call from the team. Oh, we're looking at options for next year. Can you fly out and have a chat with us at the rest day? That's when all the good business goes on. Riders moving around, equipment changes, all that kind of stuff is all kind of concluded in and around that period. So, yeah, I hadn't appreciated that Sagan's contract's coming up. And if you're his team, you've had all his best years.
Yeah.
Do you mind watching him go elsewhere? Is there a bit of a Chris Froome kind of scenario going on here in terms of we've had his best years, we're happy to let somebody else take him for a while?
Yeah, exactly. And he's going to be an expensive wage on your books as well, if you think about it. You can't the guy's still a 3-time world champion and he does still win and perform very well in the classics and the single day races. Like he's still a damn strong rider, but he isn't getting any younger.
That's it, isn't it? We can't take away from his achievements, and he still keeps racing interesting. He'll still make sure his team will still be working and fighting, and he still wants to be in the mix. But yeah, I mean, he's definitely on the older end of his career, and as you said before, there's a couple of people now of his same mold that just do it a little bit fresher, a little bit better right now. I mean, a small team like Total Direct Energy or something like that, taking him on, is he going to do much with them, or is he going to be picking up stages at the Tour of Turkey, for instance? Is he going to go out to California, go out to the Middle Eastern tours, make sure he's hitting up all the big money ones the teams needing to be at? Yeah. Are you going to see him perform? Are you going to see him performing at the highest level if he moves to another team?
I can't see. I'm looking at the list of. I have in front of me the list of the 23 teams for the Tour de France, and I can't picture him at any of them, if I'm perfectly honest.
Yeah, I get you.
But I look at the whole list, and I'm like, I don't see him really racing for any of the teams. And part of that is I'm so associated with Sagan and Specialized now, and the only teams that are on Specialized is Quickstep and where he's already at. And I can't see Patrick Lefeuvre's turn around and said, I love interviews with Patrick Lefevre. If people don't know Patrick Lefevre, he's the boss of Quickstep and has been a very long time, and he's a really long time blunt and outspoken man, so his interviews are hilarious. And I just the thing is, you look at it, so Bora Hansgrohe, flicking through my book, you look at his like entourage of riders, is obviously Sagan, Yuri Sagan, his brother, Daniel Oss, and there's probably another one or two as well in that need to go with him, plus his Swan. Apparently he always has to take his own Soignier with him, and he take his coach with him, all these kind of things. Is expensive. That's you talk 3 or 4 riders to start with. Before you start looking at the additional backroom stuff, he has his own mechanic as well.
Yeah. Has his own mechanic.
He has his own mechanic. The last with Lefebvre, he's like, I can't afford his entourage, including his own mechanic, his own and all this sort of stuff. So, it'd be interesting. The other thing is just seeing him on a different bike brand could be very interesting as well, because, he's had this relationship where Specialized do pay part of his salary, and he has all these collaborations with them. And, we look at Bora Hansgrohe, that team used to be on Argon 18 bikes before he went there. And Specialized pretty much bought out the bike contract to have him on their bike still.
Yeah. It will be. I think it'd be really, really interesting for the geeks of us that kind of like that kind of stuff. I think for the wider world, it'll kind of signal very much the latter part of Peter Sagan. Great bike rider, but the latter part of his career. Because somebody will take him. Somebody will find, some sponsor will find the money for him to get him in there. Because no doubt he'll still perform regularly. He'll still be, and he'll be a big name at any bike race he goes to.
Yep.
But we're not talking the same Sagan of 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. So Sagan at his pinnacle for me was when I went out to Tour of Flanders. I can't think what it would be. 2018, I think, when he won the Tour of Flanders as the world champion.
Yeah.
And just rode off the front.
Yeah.
And it was insane.
Yeah.
And it was like, fair play. It was the same year that Lizzie Deignan won. So it's 2 world champions on the podium. It was really, really cool. The other one that I've heard, which is very, very, very interesting in terms of contract things, is Rowan Dennis.
Oh, really?
So he apparently was supposed to be going to the Tour de France.
Right.
And apparently he's on his way to Jumbo-Visma.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I mean, I'm trying to think what I've seen him do in an Ineos jersey that isn't Race on Zwift.
Giro d'Italia last year.
Yeah. It's not really standing out prominently in my mind. What's he going to be racing this year if he's not in their tour team? He didn't go to the Giro with them. Might he go to the Vuelta? You'd have to assume so. But he was always going to be a difficult character to manage. You know, he always had this kind of like a bad boy attitude around him. Anywhere he goes, he's got the ability on a day to turn it on and be an absolute animal. But are those days too few and far between?
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I actually don't think. I thought, you know, we look at when he won his World Championship TT medals, and he just. I think the first year he won it when he was still at BMC. It was like the last time BMC were around. So he was in. Yeah. He was obviously super dialed in and comfortable on that BMC TT bike and the full kit with the Giro helmet and I think Assos were making the kit for BMC at that point. Like he's obviously super dialed in there. But then when he was at Bahrain, McLaren rocks up to the world TT World Champs on a blacked out BMC. In none of the kit that he's supposed to be wearing, off-brand helmet, off-brand bike, and you're just like, and then that's why he left that team, and then he just stormed off. It felt like he kind of settled down at Ineos a bit, but as you say, he does have this bit of like roughneck playboy attitude that seems to be cause friction in teams, I can imagine.
Yeah, and I don't get me wrong. I think Ineos probably would have put a fair amount of work into that, and I reckon he would have, as a rider as well. He's going to have known, you know, I've been a pain in the arse here. If I want to keep my career going on the right path, I need to be able to get on and work in teams. But you know, especially inside that Ineos team, when they've got another absolutely world-class time trialist that seems to be the first name on the team sheet for those kind of environments, where does Rowan Dennis fit into that? They've already got 4 or 5 other absolutely top draw kind of like sit on the front and hit it kind of men going into the bottom of the mountains. Rowan Dennis is another useful one to have, but they don't need him in the same way. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see who could take him on and who can manage him, because that's also going to be frustrating for him. You jump ship again with no real results to speak of and to showcase. That's probably quite a frustrating place to be as a rider.
Yeah, I mean, you look at I'm just looking at the whole Ineos list of riders. As a Jonathan Castroviejo, who's replaced him in the Tour de France squad. They're very similar riders. Obviously, we've already alluded to Ganna, who is just
a level above anything else we're seeing in that sphere.
The bit that's ironic is that he was 4th in the Italian World Championships. Italian National Championship TT.
Yeah. Yowzers, was he? What did he have? Like, he had to have a sit down for a few minutes. Did he? Took a breakfast or a coffee stop? Did he? Or
probably just decided he couldn't be asked. Probably was like, I'm world champ. I'd rather see someone else in the jersey. So I thought he'd go out for a coffee spin. But yeah, so
did the course twice. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, as I say, you've got Ganna, who is, you know, undoubtedly the best time trialist in the world at the moment overall. Castroviejo, who's, you know, he didn't turn up at the Spanish Nationals for the TT because he was in the Tour de France squad, but is kind of the person that you'd always go, yeah, he's going to be Spanish National TT champ. Like,
Yeah.
Most insanely aero position I've ever seen on a TT bike.
Yeah.
And then those kind of like powerhouse riders on the front of the peloton, you know, Moscon, who is also a damn good time trialist as well.
Really good. Really good.
Yeah. And then, I mean, some of the other, like the Colombian riders who are solid time trialists, Souza and Rivera, you know, you can't really look past them. Dylan Van Baal, damn good time trialist. Cameron Worth, you know.
Cameron Worth. He's someone we haven't seen. I haven't seen enough of him yet. I'm hoping to be able to see him a bit more that part of this season, kind of like get stuck in. Did he go out? Did he go off in one of the Giro teams, or there's something I have seen him in this year, but I haven't seen him enough as a bike racer yet.
But you know, he's you know, he was pro and then he went to do triathlon, so he is a bit of a diva. Yeah. Can't deny it. That there's so many riders in this list for Ineos. I mean, the thing is, you look at the freaking Ineos list and you're just like, holy shit, so strong. Holy shit, so strong. Holy shit, so strong.
Yeah,
it's just
where does Rowan Dennis fit into that? Yeah.
It's interesting. It is really interesting. And then the one to kind of summarize this episode, like we've loosely touched on the first couple of stages. The first sort of stages, they're always a bit weird in the Tour de France. Like they're always kind of like sprint stages. The whole first week's always a bit weird.
We're going to have a sprint day 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? You know, if you'd be mad to bet otherwise. Exactly. What we want to see in those first 4 days is as few crashes as possible. You know, and you know, for my mind, part of that comes down to how the race courses have been organised on the way into those sprints, just as much as anything else. You know, we want to make sure, we want to see that they're really taking steps to deal with how the peloton spreads coming into those sprints. Because I know they like to try and make it narrow and stick a late turn in there to kind of force everyone to line up, but more often than not, we see a couple of big crashes too early in the Tour. So that's what I'm going to be watching out for.
The other thing I was just going to briefly cover is the list of teams that are racing. And as we go through them, if there's anyone in your head that sticks out as a standout rider, feel free to interject. So yeah, do it alphabetically because the list in front of me is alphabetical. Yeah. And I'm going to give it the best shot of giving them all the justice of their full name because the list in front of me is full name. Agitu Citron team. Just a team which is a very overall team now. They've changed their stance from going from trying to be a Grand Tour team to now probably being more classics focused. There's no one really I can see in that team, you know.
Is there anybody in that team who's popping out for me? I think I'm going to say no comment.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he's going, but if Ben O'Connor's going, he might win a stage or two. That's about it.
But Ben O'Connor's going. You know, I'm not overlooking Greg Van Avermaet, but again, he hasn't excited me in the races I've been watching of him in the last 18 months, 2 years. So you know, I feel very strange about the gold helmet. And there was a point where he did impress me. There's a time a few years ago when he was one of the first names on my fantasy sheet. Just I've not really seen it of late.
Yeah. Okay. Alpecin Phoenix. You stand a poll. I'll stop now.
Nothing else needs to be said. Move on.
Yeah, done. Astana Premier Tech.
Astana Premier Tech. Just making sure I find it hard to get behind any rider who rides for Astana.
Same.
To be completely honest with you, I've never much liked Jakob Fuglsang. I've always thought he'd been a bit overrated.
Yeah.
That's what I say about it.
Really like them as a team.
Izagiri's all right, but
yeah, but it's just
yeah.
There's a history to that team which is very tainted, and so I have no interest in it.
Agreed.
Bahrain victorious.
Bahrain victorious. Come on down.
Obviously, Landa's not racing, so
I'm gonna struggle to say something nice about these guys. They're still sponsored by Lecole.
No, they're not. The kit's now made by Ale, I think it is.
Huh. So what Paul's had my interest for a while. Not really be anything else I see that's worth mentioning. Colbrelli, fine bike rider. He's been around a while. He's done it a lot, but again, I'm not really fussed about any of those guys.
Colbrelli won the Italian national champs, so that's the one good thing. They will get to see a nice national champ jersey. Hopefully.
Cool. I feel like for me a little bit, they're making up the numbers. Those guys.
I agree. B&B Hotels powered by KTM. There's only one rider on this team that I really care about, if I'm perfectly honest with you.
But again, this is a team that's come from the lower ranks that have been invited up based on kind of performance and their French. Brian Cocard and Pierre Roland, both have got history in this race. Pierre Roland, great bike rider. We'll definitely see him off the front of the peloton at some point. Probably only for a few minutes. These are the teams that are honourably making up the numbers.
Yes. Bora Hans Grohe.
Well, I think we've spent a fair amount of time talking about them. Kelderman I like.
Schachmann.
Buchmann I like.
Yep.
Postelberg. I mean, they're a good team. But it'll be the Peter Sagan show, as I've said before, and that show ain't quite as interesting as it used to be. Will they get Buchmann? Where will we see him by the end of the tour? He'll be the one that I'll keep an eye out for on that team.
I agree. Confidis Solution Credit. That's their full name.
Is it? That's full name. Probably usually get my award for ugliest kit.
They nail that for me as well.
Yeah, because you can't blame the lower ranked teams. You can't blame B&B, what's it face, but these guys have been around long enough. They know the score, and they still turn out something disgusting every year. Some good riders in there.
You've got Christophe Laporte is racing and Guillaume Martin racing, so there's two good riders.
Geschke, I always like, solid bike rider.
Great beard.
Yeah. Hopefully they can be competitive. Get stuck in. But I'm not going to expect much out of that group of riders. There was a time where I quite liked Guillaume Martin, but I don't know.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see them, as you say, getting stuck in and showing off the disgusting kit. They've also changed the red of their kits to be more red.
More red.
I still don't know how to freaking pronounce the full name of it. I'm just going to say Quick Step because the first word confuses the hell out of me and how to pronounce it.
De Koenig.
Yeah. I think we've spoken quite a lot about that. Alaphilippe and Cav.
It's a strong old team. They're a really strong team. De Klerk, good rider. Askren, good rider. What I want to see is them do what they've been doing the last few years. I want to see front of the peloton drilling it. I want to see Alaphilippe being given the space and the opportunity to get away and do what he does, blow races apart. And then I want to see a nice tidy formation coming in for a sprint for Cav to win at least one stage, at least.
Yeah, exactly. I'm completely with you.
I've gone from my mindset of hopefully maybe one to now at least one. I've upgraded him.
EF Education Nippo.
I'll be honest with you, I struggle to get behind him as a team. I struggle a little bit. I'm looking through that. I know you mentioned we spoke about Rigoberto earlier on a little bit. Do I think he will be a top 10 competitor? Yeah, probably. He's got the caliber.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's that interesting. Craddock, good rider. Paulus has done this before a few times, but they stand out. Obviously, their colours stand out. Their attitude as a team stands out a little bit, but I don't find myself drawn to them.
I'm with you. I know they've got a big following and fan, and I recently listened to Jonathan Volter's audiobook, which is very, very interesting. I'd recommend that one as a listen.
Over the years, I've struggled to get behind most of Jonathan Walters' teams, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm a bit on the fence with them. They have their big following and fans and everything, but I don't know. I think I'd like to see. I mean, we've got friends that work for that team, so
yeah, and I wish them well, and I hope they have a damn good time.
Yeah.
But in terms of their team being competitive in the bike race, they don't do much to entertain me so far. Hopefully, they prove me wrong.
Yeah, Groupama FDJ.
Groupama FDJ. It's nice. It's nice that they've got a good up and coming hopeful rider, but again, so often you see as a team they lack the teeth to be able to kind of do anything throughout the 3-week tour. They'll feature every now and again. Demar, as we've said, he might get himself into a couple of good positions for a sprint, but outside of Alaphilippe as the kind of like main French interest,
The one thing I will give Groupama the best award for is the best national champs jerseys, because they're always. I've got a massive photo of Demar in this book where it's just in the tricolour, the French national champs from last season.
Yeah.
No logos. Yeah. It's just what it needs to be, and I like that. I'll give him that award.
Tidy, smart. I like it.
Ineos Grenadiers. I mean, anyone.
I don't think we need to say anything more.
No, anyone.
Don't need to say anything more. I'd be very surprised if they weren't right up there at the end of the tour.
Yeah.
Put money on it.
Yeah, I'm with you. Now, this is a mouthful of a name. Intermarché Wanty Gruber Matrix. I guess it's the full name.
Matrix. Yeah.
They should be taking Taco after Taco's win at the Giro.
Yeah. I like the fact they've got a pair of Van Poppels.
Yep. Brothers Racing, that's cool.
Yeah. Again, he's been here a lot. He's done it before, pretty experienced. I don't expect to see them really being that competitive in any part of the bike race.
They are a team that, they kind of inherited the license from previously what was CCC, and previously that was the C team. And I'll be honest, I think they've kind of struggled with that, in all honesty. Louis Menkes is like their like, I guess, GC rider who had so much potential when he was younger. Everyone was touting him to be amazing, and he just hasn't quite done it, unfortunately.
Yeah. A good result for them is getting Menkes into that kind of top 10, top dozen riders. But I mean, even that feels like a stretch.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree. Israel Startup Nation. That face says it all, to be honest with you.
Again, they're another team that I struggle to get behind. If it wasn't for Froome being there, and if it wasn't for Mr. Dowsett doing a shift with them, I would just look straight past and go elsewhere. I love the fact that Greipel's still there, to be honest. I love that he's still racing. I'd probably prefer it to be with a different team, but yeah, what more can we say? Dan Martin is well beyond his years these days. A rider that I wish should have won more stages in my mind than he's actually won. Right. Hopefully we get to see him do a bit of what he does well at some point in the tour, but I imagine it'll be fleeting.
Yes, I agree. Jumbo-Visma.
Jumbo-Visma. Again, we've had a fair look at all of these guys. I mean, what more can you say? If they're not right up there competing at the end of this tour, then something's gone really wrong for them. I hope Van Aert is allowed to do what he can do best.
I agree. Lotto Soudal.
You know what? I should say again.
Thomas De Gendt.
Yeah. Is that the sum of it?
Yeah, Thomas De Gendt. Thomas De Gendt and Björn. That is pretty much the riders that stick out in my mind. And I love Thomas De Gendt.
Philippe Gilbert is an experienced captain at this kind of stuff. I'd like to see Ewan compete because he's fast. He's really fast. But quite often you come round that final corner and he's nowhere to be seen.
Yep.
So, you know, what can they do this year to change that?
Yep. What are we on next? Movistar. Team classification winners.
Almost definitely team classification winners. Hopefully they can do it without having too many dummies spat out along the way at each other. Again, it's a team that I found myself not really that interested in over the last few years. I think they've always really struggled to get their strategy right, fielding 2 or 3 competitors in the GC, and none of them really having the punches to make it work, or the team not having a strategy to make it work.
Yep.
I don't like Valverde, full stop, not interested.
Yep.
And outside of that, they're not doing much else to impress me.
Yeah, I'm with you. Arkea Samsic, and we also have, it's quite a nice little nod, is that 2 Brits are racing for Arkea Samsic. They've got Dan McClay and Connor Swift.
Yeah, and that's great. So let's hope that they get their time in the sun. Let's hope they can go out there and give a good show for themselves in this race. Outside of that, Nasser Bukhani, Warren, do you? Yeah, I mean, he's a hateable bloke.
Yeah.
Warren Barguil is one of those ones that, you know, years gone by, he was one of my picks in my fantasy team year on year on year. I had high hopes for him kicking on, and he never quite got there.
Yep, I'm with you.
He joins that other list of French riders that talked about in glowing terms and never really quite delivered.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I can't see Quintana. I mean, if he comes in the top 10, he should take that as a result, in my opinion.
I mean, he's a rider that should be coming in that top 10, right? But I don't know that he will. I think he's a long way from his best of what he was. And for his kind of rider, he needs a well-structured team around him to get him to the point of the race where he can be good, where he can really deploy what he's got. I don't know if they've got that.
I agree.
Be cool to see Connor Swift racing.
Yeah, I mean, he did awesome last year, so it'd be really nice to see that again. Team Bike Exchange. Right. The ones you're looking at on that team is probably Sebastian Chavez, Michael Matthews, Simon Yates, and then you've got Turbo, and a bunch of other domestics, really.
Yeah. Substitute. Who's that substitute? Is that Dion Smith? I know him. So Luke Durbridge, again, he's a good bike rider. Michael Matthews, good bike rider. Simon Yates. I always want him to do more and to do better, but I just don't see that team really giving him the right springboard to be able to do it.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
You know, I think too quickly when it comes to the higher mountains, he'll be isolated. It'll be down to 1 or 2 of them, and they can't really kind of keep a tab of what's going on. They can't really impact the race in any way. For me, recently, they felt like one of those teams that is baking up the numbers a little bit. And if it wasn't for the Yateses being involved over the last few years, I probably wouldn't have paid them much attention, to be honest.
I agree.
Hopefully Yates has a good race, but I also don't want him to go and just kind of cling on in there, pick up a high stage, because it's one of the ones that the GC guys let him wiggle away on because he's 12 minutes down, 15 minutes down. You still have to work hard. I'm not saying it's a win by default, but that's the kind of thing the role you see him fitting into at the moment. I'd love him to be pushing on the top guys and being competitive, but I just don't think they're going to see him as a threat.
I agree. I do agree. I mean, he's kind of openly come out saying he's aiming for stages and definitely not the overall after having raced.
Yeah.
Fair enough. That's fair enough. Team DSM. Now, I look at this. The first thing to mention is Mark Donovan, another Brit, is going to be racing, which is
yeah.
I look at this team and I always think of Soren Craig Anderson last year. Go, what's the time gap? Time to the car. This team, previously Team Sunweb, was probably one of the most exciting teams to watch last year, to be perfectly honest, at the Tour de France.
You know what? They were. They really were. I have a particular affinity for the team. I know several people that work for the team. in the coaching staff and the DSs. They were brilliant last year. I don't feel the same way about them coming into this year's tour.
I agree with you. I mean, there's the rider list is quite. I mean, Tish Benoot is probably the standout rider on the list, probably for me. But
yeah, and you know, Tish Benoot's probably been in most of these Tour de France for the last decade or so. He's been a fair number of these races, but again, he's never. I don't find him exciting.
I agree.
Good to see Donovan riding. They're a team that behind the scenes they know what they're doing. I just don't know if they've got the rider list to do it well this year.
Yeah, I agree. It'd be interesting. They're one to keep an eye on, I think, because you just don't really know. As you say, last year they did a great job, and it was really exciting to watch.
They're a team that have got a really strong ethos around development of the sport. So they bring through a lot of young riders. They bring through a lot of young boys and girls equally, and they've got a really strong women's program. Taken a lot of young British riders into their junior ranks and into their kind of neo ranks. So I'd like to see them do well. I just think this isn't the best lineup they've had. Hopefully they do some good recruitment this year and come back a bit refreshed next year.
So next up is Quebec Assos. Feel like they've been slightly revitalised this year. They've actually been winning a bit, which is great. I look at it's really cool to see Nick Lamini's going to be racing, Victor Campagnar's. To be honest, past that, Max Walshall, that guy that seems to be doing pretty well in the TTs.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on Campagnar's. Another strong time trial shaped rider that's kind of had to adapt over the last couple of years and try to really fight to keep his place on the world tour. But outside of that, they struggle to hold my attention a little bit. I don't think they ever truly lived up to what they kind of promised us when they kind of were in their pomp, if you will. When they had Cav there, and when they were trying, when they were kind of like the trendy team for a while.
Yes.
But never really delivered. And I think this is not nearly as good a team as they've had in previous years.
Yeah, I'd agree. Total Direct Energy. They've got a new kit, and it's even worse than the old kit.
Yeah.
Anthony Turgis, maybe he'll do something. Pierre Latour, maybe he'll do something.
Hey, you Edvard Boasson-Hagen.
Eddie Boss. I mean, I love Eddie Boss. I feel like he's not going to do a lot.
You love it. You love Eddie Boss. Yeah, I mean, another big French business, right? It's Total are an enormous kind of company. It's good to see companies of that size putting money into the sport. But I'll caveat that by saying they're also a big old oil company that are, they struggle to hold my attention. We need big name sponsors coming into the sport, but it's one of those things that I think it would be difficult to be throwing your sponsorship behind them. I don't see many people waving a Total Energy flag and buying a jersey. So hopefully they can contribute towards a good race, but I don't expect to see much of them.
Trek Segafredo. Now, I will put it out there that there's someone on this list that there's two riders on this list that I completely just ignored, which is no disrespect to them. One of them being Mads Pedersen, former world champion, and the other one being Nibali.
I agree with you about Mads Pedersen.
Yeah.
I don't agree about Nibali. I'm happy to overlook Vincenzo Nibali. One of those riders that I still think he was the tail end of that kind of that dodgy era of bike riders that kind of had a bit more to hide than we really wanted to. He's one of those ones that do I suspect his name somewhere is on a vial that's been scratched out the name of, sat in a lab somewhere. Maybe I lump him in my mind, perhaps unfairly, with those kind of riders, and I think I've always struggled to warm towards him.
I think that comes with Astana.
Yeah, almost undoubtedly. I think he's always talked up a lot. He can always has the potential to make something happen. But in the races I've seen him racing recently, I'm seeing him fade out the back of the group of these young guys that are storming up the side of the mountain. I expect to see much of the same in this year's tour. Talked about the Shark looking like a threat and then just rolling backwards.
Yeah.
Mollema's an interesting one. He last couple of years, he's had a good season coming into the tour and then just struggled to perform, struggled to really kick on in the tour. And because he's made my team sheet several times, and always let me down, always really let me down. I think because of that this year, I looked at his name, I thought, nah, I'm not even gonna bother looking too heavily at how you've raced this year. I don't know he can perform at that stage. Maybe he's just not had the breaks, but I don't expect much out of him.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think I'd agree with that. Like, he's someone that's exciting to watch, but probably isn't gonna. It's just.
But hopefully
week-long races than he does in a 3-week race.
Yeah, hopefully Mads Pedersen gets stuck in. See a bit of Jasper Stuyven every now and again, but yeah, I won't be actively looking for their results as a team. I've also never really liked Trek bikes. Don't know what it is. Never really found them aesthetically pleasing. So as soon as their name's slapped on the team, my head just kind of turns off a little bit. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the women's Trek Segafredo team kit is one of the nicest kits out there, but I'm not really a lover of Trek bikes.
Yeah.
I think I never particularly have been. I think a lot of it and I think a recent thing about them coming out about some of the things that were said in the terms of like race and stuff, I just didn't really sit well with me. So I have a bit of a funny. I'm not a big fan of them. And then I think one of my favourite moments with Trek was Bauke Mollema having issues with his SRAM gearing, shouting "fucking SRAM" at the top of his voice.
Yeah.
I don't know. I there's never really, I put, like, for the Giro, I had Giulio Ciccone in my fantasy team, and I think it was a great shout. He's a strong rider, but he's not racing the Tour de France. But you look at their list of riders that you've also, in the whole list, I'm talking not riders racing the Tour, we've got Charlie Quarterman there, who's someone I used to ride with him in Girona, who's a really nice guy. So, but I don't really have any care for them. And then the final team, who I also have very little care for, is UAE Team Emirates. And the reason why I have little care for them is because I really just detest the kit. It's horrible. It's so good.
I mean, you're going to be seeing a fair amount of it this year because he's going to get a lot of attention. Pogacar is going to get a lot of attention. They've got the potential to get really involved, really in the mix. They're a team that, again, along with a few others, ethically, I don't really warm to them. Yeah. But, they bring a lot of money into our sport, so who am I to complain? Pogacar has shown form again this year. He's shown that it wasn't just a one-off. He's not just a one-trick pony. How will he race this year is the interesting question for me. Is he going to try and take up the mantle, or is he going to do exactly the same as he did last year and just stick to the wheels, stick to the kind of like the main contenders, and just keep his powder dry as long as he can? I assume he must do, because I don't think he's going to have the team otherwise. How they use Mark Hershey will be interesting, because again, he's one of those guys that he can wiggle off. As we saw what he did with Sunweb before.
Yeah,
really, really interesting, captivating bike riding. I just don't know if they're going to use him that way.
I agree.
Hopefully they do, but I can't see it, because if they want to win the Tour again, he's going to need to be around to help out, you'd think.
Yeah, I mean, it was all a bit weird how he transferred over to UAE. To be perfectly honest, no one really, apart from obviously the people involved, but no one really knows. I look at the start list that they sort of provisionally put out, and you Pogacar, current, reigning winner of the Tour de France, Brandon McNulty, solid bike rider at the moment, Mark Hershey, Rafael Majka, Rui Costa, Davide Formolo. Like, there's some strong riders there. There's some very strong riders there. But it's going to be interesting to see how that team deals with the improved pressure that's now come from Jumbo Visma.
Well, yeah. I mean, how do we see them work as a team? I think is the key question. Are they going to be able to work as a team, or come week 2, are we seeing Pogačar isolated every day, kind of doing what he did last year, having to cling on in there to survive? Ultimately, he did enough. I just not sure we're going to see much of the rest of the riders in that team, I suppose.
Yes, I agree. And I'm just going to caveat it just before we end. So stage 1 is starting on Saturday. This podcast is going to go live tomorrow, which is Friday. First stage 1 is in Brest. It will be an interesting one, probably one for sprinters, puncher.
There's a few hills.
It's kind of like... It'll
come back for a sprint.
It will come back for a sprint. It's just short of 200k. It's still 2,800 meters of climbing, so it's pretty lumpy. But
yeah,
some of the other stages it is flat, really.
Yeah,
it's not an out-and-out flat stage. It'll be interesting. I don't know what the weather conditions looking like for Saturday, so that could play quite a lot into it. We could end up with a bit of echelons coming in towards the end of it. You never know. We're riding along the coast. It could happen.
Yeah, always got the potential to be windy over there in that part of France. So, but again, this early in the race, you'd expect a standard formulaic sprint for the finish.
Yeah, I agree. And I think similar for stage 2. Stage 2 runs massively along the coast for a huge part of it. It is 183.5k. Probably more flat, in fact, than the first stage, in all honesty. It looks like it's a little ramp up to the finish, but I see as you've already sort of said, the first few days are really sort of sprinters' days, the first 4 days.
Yeah. Well, if we got a little ramp up to the finish on day 2, normally a different kind of sprinter than we'd expect on the out and out flats, the out and out flats, that's where you're expecting to see the likes of Caleb Ewan and Mark Cavendish be able to do their best. Whereas you're talking little ramps, that's now where all of a sudden Sagan or Wout van Aert or those kind of guys are going to try and flex a little bit more, I think.
I agree.
So, yeah, rounding back on our favourite man, Cavendish, his best chance has got to be day 1. Got to be day 1. Go for it hard. Go for it early. That might be his shot.
But could you think that'd be his second time in the yellow jersey?
Is that all it would be? Second
time he'd be in the yellow jersey. He won the yellow jersey Dimension Data. I can't remember when it was, but I think he had a day in the yellow jersey at Dimension Data. And so, I mean, it'd be amazing. I look at the stages and I look at it and I go, I could see the stages that in my head suit Cav are stage 3 and stage 4. They're even flatter than stage 1. And so stage 4 is 150k and it is a shit ton flatter than stage 1. So I look at that. That's the stage that I could see. In fact, Cav won here in 2015 in stage 4. So,
right.
We'll see. It's going to be really interesting.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
So am I.
I'm going to put the finishing touches on my fantasy team.
So
first round selections are tonight, and the second round selections are tomorrow.
So as you can, as I've already sort of said at the start of this, George and I are going to try. I've slapped a shit ton of random invites in your diary, George, and we're going to try and do this throughout the race. Kind of give a bit of a summary of what's happened and what's going to happen next, as often as we can. Bearing in mind that you're away doing something very fun with the Internationals. I say fun. It's probably fun for you, not fun for them. Actually, maybe not very stressful for you. Yeah. It will be an amazing opportunity. So if you don't know the Internationals, check them out on social media, give them a follow, give them some love, all that sort of thing, because they're doing incredible things for...
Are we next talking on Sunday evening as before that kicks off?
Yeah, we could do.
Yeah. Because let's talk. And I'll give a 2-minute overview of what the Internationals are doing, because that starts the next morning. So
yeah, that's a good shout. We'll chat on. I'm actually getting a tattoo on Sunday as well. So
nice. Yeah,
but we'll make it work. We'll find a way of making it work.
Evening,
definitely evening. And yeah, as I say, we're going to try and do this throughout the tour and kind of keep you updated. Thank you, George. It's always a pleasure.
Pleasure.
Really
Thank you for having me.
Bikes, and we're going to keep talking bikes for basically another 3 weeks or so.
Oh, I might go run my bike actually now.
Right, I've done 3 hours this morning, but I was supposed to do 4, so I'm going to do another hour.
Oh, I might go for like 20 minutes spent to the cafe. All right, peace out, mate.
Thank you so much.